could just do this all day long, Mitch.
Pete, I could listen to you. I'm sure we could all listen to you do this all day long. Beautiful. While Pete's playing, you guys, join us. Come on in. Share this out. My guest today is Pete SALSICH, musician, lawyer, IP expert, someone that if you're a musician, if you're a creator, Pete's got your back. Pete, thanks for bringing us into today's show with a little class, with a couple of big smiles, and in a very unique way. How you doing, buddy? It's good to see you.
I'm doing great, Mitch. Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. This is a treat.
Well, it's my pleasure to have you on, and it's my pleasure to share you and your music with the audience. You know, we met in St. Louis and instantly connected. A professional creator, one that wears multiple hats with your firm. You're an IP lawyer, licensing, music rights, anything to do with tech. This is your guy. I enjoy creating from a completely different perspective and on a much lower level. But when you put the two of us together, we have the potential for a good show. So Pete, tell us a little bit more about what got you interested in music and what got you interested in law.
Sure. Actually, the answer, the two-word answer to both of those questions is the same, and it's my family. My family grew up, my dad was the oldest of 9. I'm the oldest of his 6. We have a huge family, and we just grew up with hootenannies, basically, playing music all the time. There was always music in my grandmother's house. And, you know, I got to a point about senior year in high school, and I'm like, I really want to be sitting over there with my uncles. Went away to school, ran into a guy who I still play with today, who was my roommate freshman year in New Orleans. He was already an accomplished player. He had an extra guitar. He said, put your fingers there. Now put your fingers there. Now put your fingers there. Now just keep doing that. And then he would do this stuff, you know, all over the neck. And I'm like, hey, rhythm guitar. I got it. That's my thing. I will do that. I will learn all the words. I will organize. I will hustle. You just play the magic, and I get to sit near you. And that's what got me interested. And I just absolutely fell in love with playing music with other people. There's literally nothing else in my life experience that is the same as feeding off what someone else is doing and kind of adding it into that place. And then fast forward, you know, I took a sort of a circuitous route, put off law school for a number of years. My dad was a law professor.
Oh, really?
But ultimately, you know, my dad was the reason I went to law school. I realized that he was the reason he was a happy man in my life experience was because he loved what he did. And so that attracted me. And for the first, you know, 8-10 years of my practice, I did what a lot of lawyers do, is sort of whatever you can get your hands on. But I gradually started, you know, moving over into some creative space, and I got a chance to work on a crazy, what we thought was a little comic book lawsuit. Ended up going on for 10 years. And over the course of that time, I became an IP lawyer, and I realized I can combine what I love to do, but I'm only so good at, with providing legal analysis to genuinely talented creators. And I could be part of their team on that side of it. So I kind of, you know, my family was the reason for both, and that's how I got where I got.
So my guest today is Pete SALSICH. Pete is an IP, intellectual property rights lawyer. He's also a musician, also a heck of a nice guy, and that's really why he's on the show today. What are the similarities, Pete? And by the way, everyone, share this out on the different platforms. I am looking at your questions. You can ask questions in real time. For the first 15 or 20 minutes, we're going to talk with Pete. The last 10 or 15 minutes, I will go ahead and share your questions with him. Pete, what are the similarities between being a musician and being a lawyer, if there are any?
Oh, I think they are. You know, again, I go back to the collaboration. You know, during and we're going to talk a little bit about during this COVID time, because I couldn't get out and play, I've had to sit here in what is my home office and my home studio and just do some videos on my own. But what I really love about playing music is collaborating with other people and learning from and building. So we come to something, an outcome, whether it's a song or a performance or an arrangement or even just a jam. Everybody's contributing, and the whole is better than the sum of the parts. And I think that's the way I like to practice law is the same way. When I'm sitting in front of the computer screen on my own documents, it's just me, but it's really not just me because I'm taking from what other people have done or what I've learned from other people. When I'm advising clients and we're working on a new venture, or they're trying to launch a new business and we're brainstorming about what rights might be involved and all that, that's a collaboration. I'm bringing what I know, but they're bringing what they know. And I like to approach each one of those circumstances. Every time we play the song, it's a little different. Every time I sit down with a client, it has the chance to be a little different. And that keeps it fresh for me. And I think that's, to me, that's the joy of both processes, is that I'm not doing it by myself. I'm not inside of a cave.
We're collaborators. And, I always tell young trial lawyers, think more like an artist. And when you're in the courtroom, and less as a business person, man or woman, because you're creating art based upon the notes and the instruments that you're being provided with this particular case. And I think once people figure that out, they can stand out above the noise and actually play the right type of legal song in court that's going to touch heartstrings and result in short and long-term memories and the results that your clients are looking for. I get that. You guys, we're going to have Pete. He's kind enough to offer to play a song or two. So if you guys share this out right now, in about 60 to 90 seconds, I'm going to ask Pete to go ahead and share a song. But I want to get this out on all the platforms. Favorite instrument? Is it the guitar, or are there other instruments that you enjoy?
No, it really is the guitar. I've wished I could. If they ever legislated an extra couple of days in the week, I might devote one to the piano. I'd love to be able to play the harmonica more. It's just stuff that is sort of complementary. But this became what I loved, and I don't need anything. I can plug it in. I've got amps. I can do all that, but I can just have this with me, and even in a quiet moment, that's what I get out of it. And you said something about talking to a jury. I did a lot of trial practice earlier in my career, and the only thing that I've ever compared to playing on stage in front of other people is that connection when you get with a jury and they are with you and they're anticipating where you're going and they're following your story. That's the same kind of feeling when you're on stage and somebody's, and mostly they're at a bar, they're doing whatever, but if they make eye contact and they're going like this with you, there's something right there that's happening that's very cool.
Well, this is very cool, and it's happening right now, and we're already getting questions, Pete. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to hand the mic back over to you, and while you're sharing a song with us, I'd like to encourage everyone to share your comments, share your questions, the questions that have been asked. I'm going to ask Pete on your behalf, but I'm going to hand the mic over to you, Pete, and I know you're going to help put a smile on everyone's faces who are watching today. And Lord knows we all need a lot to smile about today.
That's true.
So the mic's all yours, my friend.
All right. Thanks, Mitch. So this is a song when you asked me to come on and play a song, you said, pick whichever one you want and explain your why. So my favorite artist is Neil Young. Just my whole life he has been. And there's no rational reason why. He just is. And I just did a blog post yesterday. Neil Young just sued the Donald Trump campaign last week for copyright infringement for using this song. And so I thought, you know what? This is an old Neil Young song. I'm not going to do it Neil's justice, but I'm going to try to do it a little justice today. And that's my reason. So, and of course, Neil's reasoning is that the message behind this song is very different than what the Trump campaign is trying to do. And I don't want to make this political other than to say, artists, when they get a chance to have their message, it's important to them. And if someone's using their song for a meaning that wasn't intended, that can be problematic. And that's what's going on in this case. So here's a little bit of Neil Young from way back in 1989, but still very, very relevant today. Colors on the street, red, white, and blue. People shuffling their feet, people living in their shoes. But there's one inside on the road ahead. There's a lot of people saying they'd be better off dead. Don't feel like Satan, but I am to them. Then I try to forget it any way I can. Keep on rocking in the free world. 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 See a girl in the night with a baby in her hand under an old street light near a garbage can. Now she puts the kid away and she's gonna get a hit, and they end their life when she's done the end. That's one more kid that'll never go to school, never get to be cool, never get to be cool. Keep on rocking in the free world. Keep on rocking in the free world. Got 1,000 points of light for the homeless man. Got a kind of gentler machine gun hand. We got department stores and toilet paper. Got styrofoam boxes for the ozone layer. Got a man of the people says keep hope alive. Got fuel to burn, got roads to drive. Keep on rocking in the free world. There you go.
Wow. Wow. You're getting so much love on all the different platforms, Pete. I think you might have to hang up your legal degree and just start doing this full time.
Listen, if that was even remotely possible, I would be happy to do it.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, that has always been one of my favorite songs. I've always been a big Neil Young fan, and what a great song to pick. Thank you very much, Pete. That was awesome, you guys. So we're getting a lot of questions coming in, and that's what it's all about. So Pete, a lot of us tried to pick up the guitar in high school and do what you're doing. Didn't work out for me, but despite lessons, despite being in a band with my buddy that played quarterback on our football team, we just didn't have what it took to become a musician. What is it that allowed you to, do that first chord, make that first strum on the guitar, and then just keep moving forward and actually pick up the art of playing the guitar? What is it that makes it work for some, but others we just can't figure it out?
For me, I go back to the same thing I say all the time with other people. So I had picked it up, like you were saying, in high school, because I had all this family around me. I'd picked it up and put it down a couple of times and couldn't stick with it. But there's something about that, freshman year in college and you're in the dorm, and even if you go to every class and do every homework assignment, you still got about 8 hours. Even if you go out every night, you still get 6 or 8 hours of your time. And I had this other person who put a guitar in my hand, and it didn't take it out of his hand because he had two. And he would say stuff, and he said, now go practice. And I'd spend a couple hours, and it's that brutally tough, getting your calluses on your fingers when you're first starting and just trying, the first song I ever learned how to play was Horse with No Name, the old America song.
Right.
Because all I had to do was move one finger, just go like that and then go like that. So, it's and you're like, I'm playing a song.
Yeah, that's
and it was, and getting over that first maybe 5 or 6 weeks of then you can say to yourself, I play guitar, even if you don't do it well. But that was the thing that kept motivating. Then I went home at Christmas and I got to go sit up with the uncles and play 2 songs, and everybody clapped and I was horrible. But I got that feeling. And ever since then, and there've been long times, Mitch, when I've put it down for 10-year stretches, different stages, little kids, moving around career. But whenever I've gotten it back out, it's because there've been other people to play with. And so for about the last 10 years, I've gotten to play in bands, and I have always, the old real estate adage that you want to buy the cheapest house on your block, so you benefit from the property values of all the nicer ones. Sure. I am by design the worst musician in any band I play in for that exact same reason. And and it gives me something then to work on. I work on what I do, and the other people do what they do. And that's also helped me, give me confidence that I'm not trying to be as good as my other friends, because they are better than me and they do different things. You're being you though, Pete. You're being you, and that's the key. And that's what connects you with our community, and you're a big part of the community. Part of our community, Pete, is Anthony Small, who's actually a friend of mine, is going to be on the show, and Anthony plays guitar and has a band. And he brought up the question, which I think is perfect for you to answer as both a musician and lawyer. And just in case people are listening and not watching, Anthony asked, can you speak to presentation similarities, staging, marking spots on the stage, or in a courtroom for drama or dramatic points, for humor, etc.? That's a great question. Yeah, it is. It is. And thank you for connecting me to Anthony. We just connected this week. So good. I look forward to continuing that dialogue. I think absolutely. When my favorite jury trial story was it was the end of a couple week long write-up publicity copyright case involving comic books. Went on for years and years. Tony Twist and Todd McFarlane over the Spawn comics. And I was part of the legal team that represented Todd McFarlane. And Todd is, I don't know if you are fans of Todd's or know his work, he essentially scripted my closing argument in a trial in 2004. Now, I wrote the argument, but he staged it, and we walked around, and literally, it was state court, it wasn't federal. You could leave the podium, and literally to the point of turning and walking over here and staging was the first time I'd ever had that experience. And it was riveting. And so then when I play music now, it's very similar. If we're on a tiny little stage, it can't do much movement. If you're in a bigger place, you can move around. But even the way we organize who stands next to whom and who draws what visuals, and when you're jamming and you're turning this way and you're playing with your buddy over there who's doing that, that's all part of the same thing. The staging is very much a part of the emotional connection, I think, with the audience, whoever that audience is. I love that. Anthony asked a quick question. What guitar are you playing? Sure. Is it a Martin? This is a Martin. It's a triple 015. It's a little bit smaller, concert size, in shape. It's all mahogany. It's my baby. It's about 10 years old, and it's just sounding better and better as it ages and as the wood opens up. So Pete, I've got a question. Speaking of your baby, whether you're on court or you're in front of a jury,
I think this is over from either Facebook or Periscope. So you guys were broadcasting live. Share this out with your family and friends. When your baby, okay, not when you make a mistake, Pete, when your baby makes a mistake, when you make a mistake on stage or in the courtroom, any tips for helping us move forward without raising awareness in front of our audience or jury? How do you deal with mistakes when you're performing?
You have to separate. There's the part of your brain that is always watching you. And then there's the part of yourself that is doing the work. And it happens. I was at a show in December, big show, playing a song. That little instrumental that I opened up with is a song by Jason Isbell called "Children of Children," and we played it hundreds of times. And I'm kind of out front before the band comes in, and I'm playing along, and I'm realizing right in the middle I have forgotten the words to the verse.
So that really happens, right?
They're just gone, but I know the cadence, and it's it's a full bar, and I'm just and I kind of know what they should sound like, and then and then eventually, that's right, and I just sang it the rest of the way, and one of the guys in the band is kind of looking at me like this, but we just keep playing. I messed up one of the lines in the song I just did a few minutes ago, and I knew it as soon as it happened. And I'm like, okay, I don't get to stop and say, start over. So I think on some level, you just have to trust yourself that the overall essence of what you're doing is what's most important. And it's not really necessarily every lyric exactly the same or every word exactly the same. If you really know what you're trying to do in a courtroom, if you really know what you're trying to do in a deal, you may not articulate it the way you practiced. But if you're authentic in what you were doing at the outset, that's not going to matter. And so you just keep playing, and you're probably the only one that noticed the mistake. So it took some time to learn that, but you can't stop in the middle of the show. You just can't. So you keep going.
Sometimes we'll see a young trial lawyer, and I'm sure you've seen a young musician stop, acknowledge the mistake, and then start all over when he or she could have just been playing like you just shared with us and just keep moving forward. And most of the time the audience isn't either going to notice the difference or they're not going to care because they care more about you and the music, and they want to hear that song. Here's a question that I get asked quite often. We have political conventions coming up and everything else, and different politicians are playing different music that we all recognize, really famous songs. What are your thoughts on, do politicians need to get the rights from musicians or licensing companies to play this music? Is it an arena type of license? What are just some things that maybe most of us don't know about that whole process that we probably should?
Sure. Yeah. And that's actually the subject of my blog post about the Neil Young case. And it is very similar to the arena license. So ASCAP and BMI, these performing rights organizations, they license millions and millions of songs. And for a public performance, not syncing it with a commercial, but just playing it at a rally or at a convention, that is a public performance, and that you don't have to ask the artist permission for that. Either the venue has a license. So if you walk into a bar and they're playing music, they're supposed to have a license. And it's what they pay is kind of tied to maybe their square footage or their average revenues or things like that. There's a version of that with political campaigns, specifically for campaigns. They can buy, so it's kind of a traveling license. It travels with the campaign, and it's not as dependent on a particular venue, for example. So they would simply license all of ASCAP's songs and pay an amount. But within the ASCAP license for political campaigns, there's an opt-out for artists. The artist can specifically notify ASCAP to remove either their whole library or some of their songs from this particular license, either for all political campaigns or by campaign. They have to notify ASCAP, and they have to go through that step. And if they do that, then those songs are not included in the license that ASCAP grants to the political campaign. So they can pick anything else, but not those. What's not clear to me, and I don't think we'll know until this case plays out a little bit, is whether how that gets communicated from ASCAP to the campaign, whether the campaign bothers to check. I mean, there's a lot going on there, but that is the basic. They buy a license for their political campaign, and the pricing would be tailored to the office. A national campaign for president is going to cost more than guy running for alderman in the city council. But the version of the license is essentially the same to allow this music to be used that way.
A friend of mine asked, it's a similar type of question. What do you see the biggest mistake professionals making on social media when it comes to violating people's intellectual property rights?
Well, and it has to do with music too. And this is one of those ones that I think is really becoming more interesting during COVID as everybody's going virtual. And that is when you take recorded music and you synchronize it to video, meaning that so you record this video and someone watches it again, the same note in the song is going to show up at the same point of the image on the screen. They're synchronized. So television, commercial, movies, any kind of video, it requires a synchronization license. And that's literally the only music license that the artist has a right to say no to. And so you need to get the permission and there's 2 copyrights in every recorded music. There's the song itself, that version on album from 78, that might be owned by Capitol Records. And then there's the underlying song, the songwriters, the publishers who wrote the song. And you need permission from both groups in order to use it in any particular video. Now, it's well done in movies and television. They understand the process. There's pricing. If you're doing a little documentary, you may not have to pay as much. If you're a nonprofit and you're trying to use it for something, maybe they'll let you do it for free, but you still need the permission. What's happening is when people are just going, just like right now, if we just played somebody else's music in the background, once it's being put out on video and synced and live, you need a license for that. And there isn't a place you can go buy a library without getting the permission as well. And I think for the vast majority of times, people don't care. For example, when YouTube has when cover bands, when we put up music that we're playing somebody else's music, YouTube has a way to essentially ask the artists if they want all this music combined in this sort of permission area. And if we ever got revenue from our YouTube site, for example, that would go to the artist. And so what happens is platforms, new ways of delivering content, they start to figure out the business model because they're never going to change copyright law. So, the Electronic Frontier Foundation and folks out at Stanford, they can write law review articles about how copyright law should change. But what the YouTubes of the world is, they just say, okay, here's the law. Here's what people do with their right-click copy and paste. Let's make this a business transaction. I mean, iTunes came out of Napster. The Napster lawsuits said you can't share files. You don't own the rights in those. But Apple learned that people want music that way, but they probably really don't want to steal, most of them. So what if we sold them for 99 cents?
Yeah.
And boom. So instead of and then they go to the artist and say, instead of chasing these people down and filing these crazy lawsuits, why not make money? And so a lot of what I really enjoy doing is helping clients think through that next thing. What is going to be the next way that tech and platforms and content are, because people are already doing it. How are we going to adjust a business structure that recognizes copyright law and then structures an agreement so we don't breach it?
So let me jump in real quick with Brett asked, how much do we trust the right of use of music, et cetera, from different services? And not necessarily Canva, but there are a lot of companies we can go to. Like when I do a YouTube video, I'm paying a monthly subscription to a music licensing company that's pretty well known to get the right to use the music that they provide. I can select from. in my YouTube videos. Is that something that we should be comfortable with doing, or do you think there might be some legal things there we might want to double check before relying upon these third-party services? Great question, Brett.
Yeah, it is a really good question. And generally my answer is, trust but verify.
Trust.
So, that structure is a legitimate structure.
Okay.
So the only question is that a legitimate source? And usually a 5-minute Google will find out if they've been people who've complained that here's a new source with a bunch of licensing music. Are they already getting complaints? Are there DMCA takedown notices already hitting them? If not, chances are, and then, when you go to that service, there's going to be a terms of service. There's going to be a license. You may have to spend some time clicking through, but the license that's granted will be stated on that site. And just make sure that you read it and say, because it very well may say you can use it and synchronize it in a non-commercial use. So you can't put it on a commercial to sell something, but you can put it on your own YouTube channel. And of course, that's leaving aside the fact that we use our YouTube channels to sell our services.
So it's not a black and white type of clear-cut answer.
Not completely, but
Not
I
completely.
think you can generally trust. And so usually when they say non-commercial, what that means is you can use it for yourself, but you can't sell access to it.
Gotcha.
So because if you think about it, that would undercut the license owner's rights to make revenue from people acquiring the song. When someone watches your YouTube video, they're not acquiring your song or the song independent of your video. Mm-hmm. So you haven't really cut down the market for somebody downloading or streaming that song directly on Spotify or buying it on iTunes. But there is still, so what most of those places do that license that music, they've done what YouTube does is they go out to the artists and the record labels and they negotiate these licenses. So this library of songs is available for this type of use. And so every time, if you choose this song, that goes back, there's a record that it's that song and it goes back to the artist or the label somehow. So generally, I think you can rely on those, but it's worth just double checking if there's a brand new source, for example. Do a little looking around to see if that appears to be legit.
Always do your due diligence on anything you do in life, right? Whether it's music, law, or anything else for that matter. I want to respect your time, Pete, and Pete's going to. There's a really good question though that I want to put up. Pete's going to take us out of the show in a few minutes, you guys, with either finishing up the song or another song. And while you guys are sharing this out, bring in your friends right now because I want you guys to hear Pete and his music. There was a cool question here. I'm going to put you on the spot. And, if you need to do research, but how can artists make sure they are not accidentally infringing on already released songs? Example: Flame versus Katy Perry. I see that, and I always wonder, if it's okay or not, or what should they be taking into consideration, Pete?
So that's a great question, and I don't know if the person asking the question knows it, but one of my partners, our firm, represented the plaintiffs in that case. We represented the plaintiffs against Katy Perry, so we know that case very well. Those cases turn on two factors. One is the song very, very similar to something else that's already out there. It has to be really, really similar, maybe almost an exact copy. Because copyright infringement requires copying. Two people independent of each other could end up writing the same song and both own it if neither heard the other. So that what happens in these cases more than anything else is this issue of access. Did the alleged infringer actually have access to the original? And so, you don't, if you're coming up with something new, it's impossible to go comb all music that's out there. You can't worry about that. But if it sounds in your own head like this sounds like something I've heard before, test yourself. Because if it's something that's really popular and you were inspired by it, being inspired by it is fine. But using the same notes in the same order is not. And that's what happens in those cases.
I always like checking my playlist the morning I wake up, and I have like this idea. I check my playlist to see what I was listening to when I fell asleep the night before. And 9 times out of 10, one of those tunes was on my playlist. It was like the subconscious absorption of intelligence, right?
Yeah. That's why you typically, pretty rarely do you see copyright infringement lawsuits where both songs are famous. It happens. In some high profile cases that's happened. But more often than not, it's the person that isn't famous, and then they have to prove that somehow the artist must have heard their song. And that's a big challenge sometimes.
That's the challenge. That's like in today's world, where did you contract COVID-19? It's just a super difficult, what we call in the legal world, proximate cause proof type of situation. There are a lot of really good questions here. And what I want to do is encourage everyone to reach out directly to Pete. If you've got questions, if you want to play some music with him, if you need a good IP lawyer, Pete, for those who aren't watching live, but they're listening to the podcast version of this while they're on a run, can you share with everyone, how can they reach out and get in touch with you?
Sure. The easiest way is go to thescreenlawyer.com. Somebody asked me years ago, what kind of practice do you do? What do you do? And it was Jim Hacking, our mutual friend, who kept pushing me to get smarter and smarter and narrow my description down because I was getting wordy. And finally I said, well, my clients make things for screens of all types. And he said, you're a screen lawyer. So now that's my URL. So if you go to thescreenlawyer.com, that'll take you to my firm bio page at my law firm, Cape Sokol in St. Louis. Give you all my contact information, everything there. You can also find me at Facebook and Instagram. We're just building those out under The Screen Lawyer as well. And on YouTube, also The Screen Lawyer on YouTube. Got a series of videos where I'm more talking about just little things that come up in copyright contracts or music licensing or things like that. So look for The Screen Lawyer and you can find me.
And for those of you out paddleboarding, like I said, you're on your morning walk or run, I'll include that information in the show notes. So you don't have to stop and hit replay and write it down. I've got you covered. And Pete's got us covered rolling out of the show. What are you going to play for us, Pete?
So this is that song. I'm going to play a little Jason Isbell. This is that song that I forgot the lyrics to on stage in December. It's what I started the show, a little instrumental. I'll play a verse or so of it. It's one of my favorites. It's called Children of Children. And it's a really poignant song about Jason growing up, and they were 5 generations in his family because they were children having children. It's a pretty cool song. So here we go. Pictures of the farm before us, old man in a gospel chorus, sepia and saddle horses, easy on the reins. 81 a motor and my mama's 17 again. She's waiting at the dusty wind, the anger of the plains. Almost nothing, pray to God the gods were bluffing. 17 and old enough to reason with the pain. How could we expect the two to stay in love when neither knew the meaning of the difference between the sacred and profane?